because it's out of print on DVD, and unless you've got a VCR, the old Paragon VHS, it's very hard to see. We're going to watch a print tonight of this 40-something-year-old movie, and the print is an uncut print. So whatever you've seen before is not this version of the print. And the reason we can do that is because the director is here, and I'd like to bring him up now, Mr. William Deere. We watch a lot of biker movies every Weird Wednesday, but this one is actually good in ways that a lot of them aren't. I like them all. And most of these guys that direct these movies don't pay me, so their careers go down.
I said it was good. I'm sorry.
But Bill, you went on to do amazing things and actually had a career after this movie, which isn't always the case for these guys whose movies we show. So tell us how this all started. How did this movie happen?
Okay, my fellow director Tom Dyke and his cousin and my best friend Robert Dyke, we wanted to make a movie. We were living in Detroit. We had access to 16mm equipment, and we really wanted to make a movie. And we debated for making a horror movie or a bike movie. I like bike movies because to me they're westerns, and I'm a big fan of westerns. And after seeing The Wild Bunch, I was totally hooked. So I fought on the side of let's make a bike movie because basically it's a western. And except you got some gas in the horses, you know. You know, it was just a labor of love. It was going to take us 5 months. We had it all planned out. We had made some money doing supermarket commercials, and it took 5 years to make this movie. But we never gave up on it. We'd run out of money. We'd go do some more work, make some more money. You'll see scenes where we shot part of the scene at one season, then it got dark, it got cold, something happened, we came back next season, and we would say to the biker, are you sure you wore that? You know, so you'll see one scene, if you look, the guy's sleeves pop on and off and off. And one thing I should say about this, the print is very faded. So Larry assures me that you folks are used to watching prints where the color has been depleted. And this one is very much that way. The print itself is in great shape. But the color is bad. So I like to think of it as an ultra-violent bike movie rendered in pastel. I've laid off this print onto high def, and I'm in the process of cleaning it up and doing the color correction. And it's amazing that they can pull the color back that they can. And I'm going to issue a Blu-ray and full stereo sound because I want to preserve it in the best possible medium I can preserve it in. So I really appreciate that you folks are going to see this in such a degraded state, and hope if you do like it, you'll go back to it on the Blu-ray when that's available. I'll talk more and answer any questions after the show.
Yeah, we'll do it 2.5.
It was just a total labor of love, and in many ways an ode to Sam Peckinpah on my part, anyway.
Music. And real quick, who are they going to hear on the soundtrack?
Well, the soundtrack was by Michael Nesmith. I'll tell you a very quick story. Again, I love the westerns. We were in L.A. doing. We had contracted with a guy to do a edit of the movie for us, and what he wanted to do for the edit, he wanted the credit of post-production supervisor. And we didn't know what that meant, so we said, yeah, okay, that's fine. You can do that. And so during the process of the edit, our lead actor, who's a very good guy, a guy named David Hyree, he's the blonde fellow that gets picked up by the bikers. And our editor said to us, quite frankly, this guy's not a very good actor, and you could loop this movie. And we went, what does that mean? And so it means, you know, replace the actor's voice. So he said you could find an actor and replace the voice of the entire movie for this guy. So we had tickets to a play in Westwood, and the play was William Ingen's The Prison. And we liked the actor in the piece, and we met with him after we waited by the stage door, and met with him after his play. And we said, we have a movie we did, and we need to loop the voice in the movie. Would you be interested? He said, certainly, yes. And we said, he said, how many lines is it? We said, well, it's the lead character, so it's the entire movie. And the guy said, the entire movie? And we said, yeah. And he said, well, how much are you offering? We said, $150. That was a lot of money to us at that time. And he agreed to do it. And so the young boy, you won't see his, David Hyree, you won't see his real voice. You'll see the voice of this actor. And the actor's name is Nick Nolte. And we got him 2 weeks later. I think he got Rich Man, Poor Man and became a star. So basically, you're going to see this very slight, long-haired blonde kid speaking with kind of a young but raspy Nick Nolte. And there's a million other little stories about this, and but I'm willing to answer any questions you may have. Like, except, like, are you fucking kidding me? That's but anyway.
I'll go over that. I'll go over that. The bikers in this movie are real, by the way. So when you see the motorcycle gang,
Yeah.
the Scorpions?
Yeah, they were called the Scorpions. They're a real motorcycle club out of Detroit. And we wanted them because, well, just the aesthetics of the fact that they owned their motorcycles and had the costumes. This is very, very extremely low budget movie, but I'm so glad it survived to this day. And thank the Drafthouse and thank everybody for showing up to see it.
Thank you for coming. So, yeah, we'll get this started. Just go over some house rules real quick. We're about to watch an X-rated, unseen, because it was so violent, right? It got an X rating for violence, which was rare, right?
Well, back then, when we shot on 16, we blew it to 35, and this is the first answer print off the 35. This is the print that went to the ratings board. They rated it X. There was no such thing as an NC-17, and it was rated X mostly for violence. It would be probably an R today. You know, you can make your own decision. The print you're going to see tonight has a couple of extra scenes that were deleted from the copy that's been existing for 40 years. And you'll also see a little bit more violence here, and a little more blood splattering all over the place.
In slow motion.
Yes. And it's probably with the things like McDonald's and those people revealing pink goo. Our pink blood is probably almost as scary as pink
It
goo.
won't be so shocking in pink. All right, so no talking during the show. You know, these guys worked hard to make this movie over 5 years. They had, you know, Nick Nolte recording his own dubbing. We don't need dubbing from you guys. You're not better than Nick Nolte. Get your wait staff, and we'll come back up here afterwards and we'll answer some questions.
Just enjoy it. It's again, it was a labor of love, and for being just, you know, very young kids in Detroit who wanted to make a movie, we made it. We actually got a theatrical release, and we were, you know, I'm still very proud of the accomplishment. Okay, like any movie I ever do, I look and go, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? But that's, they are what they are, and you can only, you know, do as good as you can on the day. So, anyway, I hope you all have a good time.
So that was pretty cool, right? Just watching a regular biker movie with all the really long scenes of people just riding and nothing really happening, and then there's a guy with an underground bunker full of guns and weed. Like this movie is just constantly full of awesome surprises. Crazy Wild Bunch ending. So cool. I'm sure we all have some questions.
Guns, I'm okay.
So, Vietnam didn't make you too happy, apparently.
Pardon?
Vietnam, not a happy time?
No, it was, I mean, you saw Nixon on the dartboard there. I mean, it was we were trying, you know, with the title alone, it was pretty pretentious, you know, Freedom RIP, but we were Ursat hippies in Michigan trying to make a movie, trying to make a statement. I haven't seen this print in a long time. It's in rough shape. I appreciate you guys sitting through it.
We watch stuff over that all the time. It's actually pretty good to me. So I wrote down 3 words at dinner that you brought up, some stories. The first one I wrote down was drugs. So tell me a little bit about marijuana in that jail cell scene.
Okay, we had a location manager, Mike Kowalski, who had arranged the jail for us, and we started downloading our equipment into the jail. And one of the guys said, how long is this going to take? And we said, maybe 5-6 hours. And he said, your guy told me 20 minutes. Back it up. So we literally had no location, and somebody, I think probably had been a prior resident, said, I know people at the Livonia jail. I can probably get us in there. So we literally, that night, got into the Livonia jail. They only had a couple of prisoners. They moved them into a holding cell. And once the police in the jail saw that we were basically pretty harmless and we were just shooting and doing all that stuff, they left us alone for the rest of the night. Then the bikers started to spark up some joints, real joints, and we're kind of going, okay, so that smoke coming out of the...
Inside the jail.
Inside the jail. And then the prisoners in the holding cell are going, whoa, man, give us some of that shit, you know? So we're shooting the movie and passing joints from our bikers to the prisoners. Meanwhile, the cops are sitting up behind the door.
And it was a pretty serious offense back then. Not that the weed was serious, but you can imagine the kind of weed you got in Michigan was $15 for an ounce. And if you smoked the entire ounce, you may have felt something, and I think it was this oxygen deprivation. But that was actually that was quite a night in the jail there.
Was that song written for the movie, or did it already exist?
The fellow in the back of the cell playing the guitar, or one of the bikers, had written that song for the movie, so we put it in. That was really nice.
Same thing with Semi-Man?
Semi-Man was written by, I thought it was in the credits, I can't remember his name now. But he had one of the, his name was like Red or Riff or something, but I always remember his album, Nesmith that brought me the album to look at and then to use Semi-Man. And this guy had a quote on the back of his album. I never forgot it. It was just one of those liner notes things. And he said, "I saw a flag at full mast today, and I knew somewhere somebody was alive." Great statement.
Well, when you originally wrote this movie with your cohorts, did you conceive the bikers as such good guys, or was it hanging out with them that they endeared themselves to you? Because these are, in most biker movies, the bikers don't come off as such clean, wholesome, fun guys.
Well, we wanted to be victims. We wanted them to be victims of their circumstance, meaning our perception, and mine mostly through movies, and the fear of motorcyclists, and especially Hell's Angels were for real at that time in Oakland, and so we wanted to go counter to that, and so it was basically written with them being decent guys who were singled out, because of the way people had stereotyped them. And, again, a lot of that comes from movies.
Now, you say they're good guys, but one of the words I wrote down is threatening a beating or beatings. So tell us a little bit about the distribution of this movie.
Yeah, I'll tell you, this movie was distributed originally by Canon, and I think it was Chris Dewey and somebody Friedland. They had the original Canon. They made their mark on the business marketing-wise because they put out Peter Boyle's first movie, Joe, which is quite an interesting movie. Susan Sarandon plays his daughter. I think it was her first movie. And he was a bigoted guy who ultimately ends up killing his own daughter because of his bigotry. And so they basically, we were lucky to get a distributor. They promised us theatrical release for us. They reluctantly agreed to give us an advance, which was kind of unheard of in those times because they didn't have to do anything. We were so desperate to get our movie out there, we would have done anything. But they gave us an advance that was exactly to the penny the amount we needed to pay CFI, the lab, to get the negative out of the lab to hand to the distributor. And then the distributor told us you'll never see a fucking penny after. They were that blatant, to sort of, I guess they were doing us a big favor. And so in trying to explain to the bikers who were on a deferment that we really weren't going to make any money, and that didn't go over so well. And at one point, I think about a year after the movie had been released, and they had cut down, the distributor had cut down quite a shorter version of this. We got a very serious call from the bikers, and Perry, the guy who picks up the blonde guy in the beginning of the movie, he was sort of the liaison between us and the club, and he said that the guys were really serious and really mad, and we had to meet with them and resolve it, or there was going to be trouble that he couldn't protect us from, and that was basically going to be a rather severe beating, approaching death. And it was a very serious thing at that time because they felt that we were probably sitting home, rolling in the money and screwing them over. So we had a meeting at the attorney's office of the bikers. And one of the bikers had been in the Northern Peninsula of Upper Michigan and had seen the movie playing at a theater, and I think they were with friends and they went and saw it. So they knew for a fact the movie was playing in Northern Michigan. We knew nothing about it, and we're saying that we knew nothing about that. We know, and they're looking at us like, okay, in a few minutes you're going to be in the parking lot under everybody's foot. And so I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we call the distributor? So we called the distributor from the lawyer's office with all the bikers present. We got the distributor on the phone. I made up a story. I said, hey, Chris, my parents were in Upper Michigan, and we we understand the movie's playing up there, and they want to know the theater so that they can take some friends to see it, because we hadn't had a chance to see it. They never saw it in the theater. And we're waiting over the phone, and then we hear from the distributor, that movie didn't play in Northern Michigan. No, it's not playing anywhere. We didn't. And so basically, by those guys lying to us and the bikers over the phone, it saved us from a really serious kind of retribution. And I really believe I would not be sitting here in this shape had we taken the beating they had planned for.
That's the lesson to any independent filmmakers out there. If you want to make a biker movie cheap, get real bikers because they have their own costumes or motorcycles, but work out ahead of time how to pay them.
So, you know, it's, you know, it was, they were good, but like anything in this business, everybody thinks that, you know, once you make a movie, you're just rolling in dough, and this one, no, we were, you know, we used to joke that if they ever were honest with us, we'd be rolling in pennies. But that was, you know, there's a lot of stories that, I mean, just, you know, like that, where the bikers over the years, you know, still think that we made a lot of money on it. We really didn't. And the distributor, you know, thank goodness for that one day in that office when they were all present, that they heard the distributor sort of lie to us and say that the movie had not been shown. So.
Where do you think your career was going to go from there?
Well, boy, if you asked me tonight, I'm amazed it went anywhere. I mean, you know, I literally after this, I figured the next, instead of action, I'd be yelling paper or plastic. No, I fell in love with movies. I was a kid in Toronto, Canada in the late 40s, and my mom managed a movie theater. We didn't even have a TV, but I'd go there every weekend and look at the movies. I didn't know what a director was or a cinematographer or anything like that, but I just knew that these movies were a window to a world that I would otherwise not have any access to. I just fell in love with movies. And then when I moved to the States at 11 years old, I met a guy, Robert Dyke, in high school, and he was a movie nut, and his dad had an 8mm camera. And so from that point on, we were making movies. I still got tons of the 8mm we made. And my dad worked as a stagehand through the IA local, and there wasn't much movie business in Detroit. There was some industrial film business with all the car companies. And once in a while a film would come in. So when I became 18, I joined the union and I did all kinds of jobs, you know, schlepping cable and doing everything, working Spotlight. Spotlight was great because rock and roll was on the upswing, so we got to work all the concerts, Stones, Beatles, everything, so that was great. And I just always had a love of movies, so I would do whatever I could to make some money and make a little movie. And this was the first time we attempted a full-length movie. And, you know, I look at it now, and one of the things I criticize myself for, even on projects through my career, is put more time into the script, put more time into what you're ultimately going to film, you know, and this is, you know, this script needs a lot of help. But this movie is what it is, and thank goodness for sort of the grindhouse era, because there's, you know, it sort of stands, you know, it sort of finds its place in that era. I look at it now and go, why didn't we? Well, oh my God, why didn't we? Why didn't we? You know, so, but it's kind of fun to look at it. It's kind of hard to look at it. But,
you finished it, though. I mean, you conceived it and you finished it, and we're here watching it all these years later. That counts for something.
No, it does. It does. I would occasionally teach film classes or talk to people, you know, about different things like that. Just what you're saying is that it is an accomplishment. We did get it done. And I would say to people, I would say there's only one difference between them that do and them that don't, and that's them that do. So I will give ourselves credit for following it through and doing it and actually making a movie, even though you know, there was many times it looked like we were never going to finish it over the 5 years, but we did finish it, and we got a theatrical release, so we were quite proud of ourselves. But with that came the illusion that the theatrical release was going to generate all kinds of money, and so everybody who we had promised money to if it ever gets released had their hand out, and no money ever came our way. So, but that's, again, I'm grateful that we made it, because having completed it, it made me understand that if we did work hard, we could make a movie and we could get it released.
And it connected you with Michael Nesmith, who you approached because of this movie, and his initial reaction to seeing the movie, of course, was?
Well, when I met Michael Nesmith, again, my love of Westerns, I saw an ad for McCabe's guitar shop in Santa Monica. The word McCabe, because of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, caught my eye. And Michael Nesmith was playing there. They had a little venue in the back, and I called him up just out of the blue, introduced myself, told him we had a movie, and that we were looking for someone to score it. And he came out to the editor's place, and he and I stood basically for 2 hours, watched this movie on a 16mm moviola, little screen about this big. And I remember this long pause after the movie, and Michael Nesmith looks at me and goes, "Bill, this is a terrible movie." And I was like, "Oh, okay, this isn't going good." So I had to make like a quick decision. I said, "Yeah, it is. Would you like to score it?" He said, "Yeah." Still to this day, don't understand that whole conversation. But it was a good union. We struck up a good friendship, and we went on to make Time Rider, and we made Elephant Parts, which won the first Grammy for a video. And so it was a great, a great sort of a bonus that I got out of the project. That it helped me continue my career, and I do give a lot of credit to Michael for that. And then he went off to do other things, and I went off to mostly do commercials and try and get more money to make more movies. I was very fortunate to do An Amazing Story, and The Amazing Story led to me doing Harry and the Hendersons, and that was my first studio picture. And I can tell you a little, and that was frightening in its own right because of just the size and the scope and what was expected. And then having not dealt with real professional actors, which might have been obvious from this movie. I can tell you a quick little story about Harry. One day we were back from Seattle. We had shot about 6 weeks in Seattle. We're back on stage 12 at Universal. We had the entire house built in the backyard so we could shoot night scenes in the studio in the daytime. And I get there, and one of the ADs says to me, "John Lithgow would like to see you in his trailer before we start." Okay. And so I go in John's trailer, and he says, "Bill, this scene today with Melinda Dillon and Don Amici." I was thinking, I looked at Melinda's lines, and I could sort of say this in my line, and what Don says here, I could say this. And I realized he had rewritten the scene and basically taken the other actor's dialogue and put it in his mouth. And so I'm picturing him doing all the talking, two actors standing there if they would even stayed on the set for that. I don't know what to do. I was like, Frick. I said, "John, he says, so I made copies of this scene. I'd like you to take them over to their trailers and show them." I'm shaking in I'm hoping he doesn't see just how actually, unprepared I am for this. And I remember saying to him, I said, "John, I think you're on to something here, but I think what you should do is you should tell them. I think you should go tell Don Amici that, that scene would be better this way, and tell Melinda Dillon would be better this way." And he says, "No, Bill, I think you're the director. You should go tell him." I said, "No, John, I think you rewrote this, and you obviously have you know what you're doing here." And he looked at me and he said, "I think we could go with it as it is." I walked out of that trailer like, what was that, He's a great man. He's a great guy, John. But one day he said to me on the set, he said, because I was at, with Harry and the Hendersons, it was a pretty broad movie. And he had been nominated for the Academy Award for Garp and for Terms of Endearment. And he said to me, he said, "Bill, I think you're asking me to be way too broad." And I remembered at that point I gained a little more confidence. I said, "John, your co-star is 8 feet tall. He's completely covered with hair. If you think you can be too broad in this scene, I'd like to see it." And then he wins like 5 Emmys for, tearing the scenery up in Third Rock from the Sun, So, but it's always an education. But that was kind of a real education for me to suddenly work with stars and people of that caliber, and you realize that they have designs on who and how they want their character to be portrayed, even at the expense of other characters. I'll tell you a funny story though. I met Quentin Tarantino. I met him a couple of times. And the first time I met him was here in Austin. He was shooting his half of the Grindhouse movie. And he was very cordial, and he said to me, he said, "Bill," he said, "I knew one day I would meet you and I would have to make a confession." He said, "I stole a line from Harry and the Hendersons, and I gave it to, and I put it in From Dusk Till Dawn." And I said, "Well, what line was it?" And he said, it was when Don Amici looks in the mirror and says, "Every morning I get up and look in the mirror and ask myself if I'm crazy." And I love the irony of that line. It's a line I had written, and Don Amici said it in the movie. And what was interesting is that we were just reviving a big re-edition of Harry and the Hendersons, and I was going to do a commentary. So I got to put the Tarantino story in the commentary, which I thought was good. But immediately after that, as soon as I got home, I put Dusk Till Dawn in the machine and looked at it, and sure enough, there's Harvey Keitel driving down the road. He folds the mirror down in his visor in the van and says that exact line. So I was kind of flattered. That was kind of cool. It made a great story for the commentary.
So, getting back to Northville, if I'm not interrupting,
No.
you had a good story about guns I wanted to get out before we open it up any further.
Oh, the one with the wall?
Yeah, just in the cemetery, you're in between an elementary
Oh.
school and an apartment complex. And was anybody here for the sadist last night? This is similar to that story, so you know where this is going. But.
Well, our production manager told the people that gave us the location for the cemetery that we were shooting a love story. And they weren't there that day when the helicopter came over and started firing. But the cemetery was between a school and an apartment building. And some of the bikers, even though we had provided them with blanks, like if you saw Wayne, the guy with the long banana clip on that one little M1, he'd go, bam, 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 bam. And we look at the dailies and go, Wayne, what's going on? Because we could only fire one bullet at a time. It had to be a mechanically ejected pump gun or something. We didn't have, we couldn't build blanks that would fire a semi-automatic weapon. And Wayne said, nah, don't worry about it, man. I was shooting under him. So fortunately, we didn't get reports of anybody being killed, but there were rounds flying out of the cemetery, you know, either in the direction of the schoolyard or... That's a true story.
Accomplishment number 7, at least, from that movie, from that shoot, you fired live weapons near a school and an apartment.
Yeah. But you didn't hear that here.
No. Blank, all blanks.
All blank.
Are there any questions in the audience? George?
Yeah, I'm curious how the practical effects were accomplished.
Well, when you say practical effects, the blood hits, we fired off electronic. I mean, basically, I had learned through being a stagehand because we'd build flash pots for comedy bits where a big puff of smoke would go out in a magic act or something. And you simply take a piece of household cord, you have a lamp cord, which is a bunch of fine wires, and you reduce it down to one wire, tie a knot in the wire, and just put it on the cord, and if you plug it in the wall, where you tied that knot, it'll spark. So we could put those inside a firecracker. And we built a leather 6-inch square plate, leather plate for the bikers to wear to tie on with thongs, and we had a piece of copper on that, riveted on, and we taped the firecracker to that. It was never powerful enough to rip the clothing, we had to pre-cut the clothing. And I was telling Laird that then we put a blood bag in front of it, and that after lunch the hits were always better because we had leftover hamburger pieces or anything we had, we put in the blood bag. So some of the hits look a little chunkier, and you can go, okay, that's an after lunch hit, that's a before lunch hit. And Wayne, the guy who gets shot up so many times and keeps on coming near the end, that was the second time we had wired him, because we were standing there talking to him, he's all wired up, and all of a sudden he just explodes in blood all over everybody, all over all of us. And you can look over, a couple other bikers are laughing, they had plugged it in, you know. And you know, you don't go, hey, you dumb, you go, okay, we're gonna rewire Wayne. But it was, you know, and the explosion, the gas explosion, we really had never done that before. We put a little, same thing, wire fuse, you know, again to you know, plug it in the wall and fire it off. And we wanted a gas explosion, so we dug a little hole, we put this little ping pong ball with flash powder and tape around it, and the wire fuse going up. And we took a baggie and put literally maybe a little 3/4 inch of gasoline in the baggie, and put the baggie on top of it. And that fireball went out. We just had started to go up the tree. And I mean, the fireball must have been like 12 feet in diameter. And we're just going, oh, please burn up, please burn up, please burn up. And finally it burned out. We were very lucky nobody got hurt. You know, we were really lucky nobody got hurt.
Next question.
Yeah.
Did that rapist pig get what he deserved?
Did the rapist get what he deserved? Oh, in the end? Yeah, we debated putting a gunshot. We figured that, you know, people would, you know, they'd figure out that he was going to get killed. You know, there was no other place for him to go. I think we had a gunshot in there one time. Maybe took a gunshot out. But Let me ask you guys a question, because you were such good fans to come and see movies this old and sometimes prints in this bad a condition. I'm trying to restore this, to put it on a Blu-ray. There was one edition that came out on DVD, but it wasn't even in widescreen, and it's not this cut, so the bloodletting is cut down. The scene of Teeny and Tiny, the bikers at the gas station, has been cut out. This is the first time that's what well, do you really mean that? Because I know that I look at that scene now and go, okay, I kind of understand why they cut that out. But I mean, it is part of the real movie, so that's why I'd like to leave it in. But in doing the restoration, should I stick with basically just making what we have the best it can be? Or should I enhance the sound, or should I do, I mean, I wanted, this is going to be the only time and the last time it ever gets touched. And I'm really kind of debating, should I help it a bit, or should I just restore it to what it was when we made it, the best possible version? Is there...
Don't be honest.
What? Do whatever I want to it? Okay, well that's good, that's helpful, because...
Well, with something like the audio, you can have 2 tracks, so you can have the original monaural and you can have an extended.
Oh, that's good. That's a smart idea. Yeah. So I do want to synthesize it in the stereo.
Scenes that aren't in the known cut, so that you can watch it in your window seat.
Oh, I could do that. Yeah. I think though, just yeah, that's interesting. But it wasn't. We didn't make the cuts. The distributor made the cut when they called it Northville Cemetery Massacre. I'm going to put out the Blu-ray as Freedom R.I.P. The Northville Cemetery Massacre. That was the original title. I haven't seen this in probably 3-4 years, maybe even 5. So it always kind of takes me aback a bit when I look at it. And this tonight, looking at it, knowing I'm going to go into this sort of restoration, this really showed me I have a lot more work ahead of me than I thought.
So is there a bear in the cemetery or something? I know there's one scene where one of the bikers shoots the gun straight in front of him, and the helicopter's still in the air at that point. I was just kind of laughing at that. I don't know if anyone else noticed that.
I saw a few things that were, let's just say, out of continuity. I'll tell you one story, though, that's true, that we actually went to a store that, I don't know if they even have these stores anymore, but you could go in and they had live poultry, and you could pick out a chicken, and they would kill it and pluck it and gut it and get it ready for you to take home. So we went to that store, bought 2 live chickens, and so in the barn scene, we had these 2 chickens at the end of the day, and we thought, well, what should we do with these chickens? And we thought, well, let's take them back to the store we bought them at and have those guys do the procedure, where they kill them and pluck them, and we'll take them home and eat them. And those chickens, this is so terrible, they were so bruised up. I mean, I really feel bad for those chickens. I mean, we ate, no, I don't know if we even ate them, they were so bruised up. We did feel really terrible. I mean, these are stories I feel terrible telling. It's been so many years ago, and because I had a partner, I can blame all the bad shit on him.
Those chickens would have been long dead by now anyway.
Yeah. Fortunately, a lot of the folks in the movie have passed on. Putnam the bad cop is dead. About half the bikers are dead. The hunter's dead. The dad's dead.
Shit. Now you can make some money.
But anyway, it was a labor of love, and to us, we were working with what we had. I think that over the years, I was fortunate enough to make other movies and grow as a filmmaker. So this seems much worse to me personally than even than I remembered. Although I think it probably is within the realm of what people were doing in that era.
So what was the most expensive element of the film? Was the helicopter, or?
That was actually borrowed, and somebody knew somebody with a helicopter, and we borrowed it, and we picked, they had a Hughes 500, and fortunately Revell had a model of a Hughes 500, so we could do that, and the guy let us paint First of all, the scene with the shooting range, that was the color of the helicopter. Well, about a year later, we needed the helicopter for something else for the gun battle, and he had repainted the helicopter. So he allowed us to paint his helicopter. And what we did is we found that if you mixed tempera paint with dish soap, then it would wash off easy. And we literally painted the helicopter, got it to the site, and it started to rain. And it washed, enough of the paint off that we couldn't shoot, and we had to go back a couple weeks later and redo the painting of the helicopter. But the guy was a good sport, he let us do it. But that was just somebody knew somebody with a helicopter. We could have never afforded one otherwise. And the model that blows up, that Revell Hughes 500 is about that big. It really suffers a little bit from, not having a big enough miniature. But at that time, we were going for it. We were a little full of ourselves and a little full of what we were doing, and that probably was a good thing because it fueled us to keep going. We didn't judge ourselves as harshly as I, judge myself now looking at it.
Probably could take a couple more questions here.
So why the rigged up Jesus?
Pardon me?
Why the rigged up Jesus?
Oh, that was actually Francis of Assisi. He was the saint who had the lens, I believe in. Yeah. No, but I mean, that wasn't. You mean the one with the periscope in him? Yeah, that was Francis of Assisi. I remember that we just. I don't know why, except that we thought it was kind of cool, He's the one who usually has all the arrows in him when you see pictures of him.
That's Valentine.
Is it?
Cece's the one with the animals.
I don't know.
Questions? Red shirt.
So, the fact that this took 5 years to get done, working with the bike club, did you ever have any trouble sort of, pulling in all the sort of prominent faces for, when you had time to shoot some stuff?
No, they were pretty good about that. They were pretty good. But I think that they hoped that it was going to make money and that they would see money, And unfortunately, that never happened. We never saw a penny off this movie. We spent a lot of money over the years to get it done, and like the editor, he worked for free, and we just never saw any money on the movie. And even the earlier DVD that was put out, there was never enough purchases to justify that DVD being made. And I'm not restoring it to make money. I don't expect to make money on this. I'm hoping that if we do some kind of Kickstarter campaign, that we will definitely offer a Blu-ray, but we will expect donations that would be in par with if you went to buy the Blu-ray if it was available. So people can be a part of it. We may put their name on it as with an additional end credits, but we don't expect to make any money. I just want to leave this thing or elevate this thing to the best format it can be in. But I was very surprised tonight at some of the how soft some of the focus is, and that's just because of the equipment we were using and the lenses we were using and the blow up, which at times seemed pretty good and seemed a little dicey tonight. But as they can restore the color, they can also sharpen the image a little bit, which would be very helpful.
So will you have time tonight to hang out in the lobby a little bit and talk with us?
Yeah, I'll hang out on top, and I have a little video camera here, and anybody wants to say anything and is willing to sign a release, we're going to need all the ammunition we can for a Kickstarter campaign to kind of justify asking for money to fix this.
I want to thank all you guys for being a great audience, and thank you, Bill, for...
Yeah, thank you.
We watch exploitation movies every week here, and I always try and set up the context of where they came from, who made them, and in terms of the time, like you said, this was the kind of movies people with no budget were making, and there's a real humor in yours, and there's a real, I can tell you were hungry to make movies in that movie, so I think you should be proud of it. I really think it's inspiring.
That's nice for you to say, and we weren't trying to make a silly movie or a movie that was deficient. This really shows what we did with what we had at the time. My biggest criticism is the script, And I'm a little surprised that our sound mix, it was done at Glen Sound, which was a very formidable sound house in LA at the time. And I don't know if it's just this old optical track or what, but it's a very noisy track. I was kind of surprised. But any questions you have, I'm willing to answer anything about it. I look at it as something that I feel I should preserve. You don't hear me saying that, boy, once I get this, preserved and on Blu-ray, then it's really going to be a movie. No, it's going to be a better version of this. It's going to be a version of this that you can, put in your Blu-ray player and watch, and it wouldn't look quite, as depleted. So I like the idea that you guys said go ahead and do what you want with it. I think that's interesting. I didn't know if especially you folks who do look at these kind of things, I regard you as more of a purist than I would be on this. And if you had said, no, just, make it what it was back then. But I'll probably try and enhance it a little bit. There's not too much I can do to it. But, and you should probably tell me, too, is it worth doing that? Is it worth going to the expense of preserving it? Because this is the only print. This is the only. There's no other print in the world of this cut. So, and I did learn something about film. We screened this at the New Beverly in LA maybe 6 years ago, and it had not been screened since 1970, maybe 76, 77, and the color was perfect. And what we learned is once that film had been exposed to air over the after that screening, the color started to fade away. It had been wrapped tight for like 30 years, and the color we were amazed at the color, because the movie that preceded us at the New Beverly that night, it ran 2 motorcycle movies, was all pink like this, and we fully expected ours to look that way, and it didn't. It looked really good. So there's going to be a bit of a job to get it to look halfway decent. I can make no excuse for the script and the acting. I mean, these were local Detroit people, and they were trying their best, and we, were trying our best, and it's just a matter that we weren't involved enough as filmmakers to make a better film. This is the best we could do at that time. If that makes any sense. I'm not making an excuse for it. I'm just, again, I sat there in cardiac arrest for 2 minutes watching this. But I do that with all my films anyway. I don't care. Just a year ago or 2 years ago, I'm going, oh, why didn't I do that? Or why did I do this? So I think that's just the nature of being in this position.
Let's continue this conversation a lot.
Yeah, we can do whatever you want. I'll hang out and listen to whatever you have to say, and don't be afraid to say something bad. I got a pretty thick skin,
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you so much.